Welcome to the Multisport Mindset Podcast, a podcast by age group athletes for age group athletes, focused on sharing stories, knowledge, and highlighting success in endurance. My name is Aubrey Hayes, and my co-host is Joshua Gordon. Welcome to our endurance journey. Welcome to the Multisport Mindset Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of endurance sports, training strategies, and the mindset that fuels peak performance. I'm Aubrey Hayes, USAT Level 1 coach, age group athlete, and co-founder of Precise Multisport. Today's podcast is about Dustin Biggerstaff, a former Marine, lifelong athlete, and aspiring chiropractor with an impressive story of perseverance, resilience, and pursuit of excellence. Dustin, how's it going?
It's great, and I'm beyond excited to be here, honored to be invited onto the podcast.
Awesome, good stuff. Before we get into Dustin's bio, if anybody has feedbacks or questions for the podcast, there's a link below the podcast that says text us here. You can shoot info directly to it, and we'll respond or bring it up on the next podcast. So let's get a little introduction of Dustin here. So Dustin Biggerstaff, he's originally from Louisville, Kentucky. He is a distinguished U.S. Marine Corps veteran and a passionate advocate for health and wellness. After earning his BS in kinesiology and exercise science from the University of Kentucky in 2009, Dustin served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 2011 to 2019 as a reconnaissance Marine, completing boot camp at Paris Island and later stationed at Camp Pendleton, California. As a combatant dive team leader, he competed 3 times in the prestigious Recon Challenge, earning you second place in 2017 and first place in 2018. Following injuries sustained in 2016 and 2018, he medically retired from the Marine Corps and transitioned to civilian life, moving to Cumming, Georgia, where he spent 2.5 years supporting the DoD's airborne community and technology cells. Currently, he is pursuing his doctorate in chiropractic at the Life University in Marietta, Georgia, with an expected graduation of June 2025. He's married to his wife for 14 years and a proud father of 2 children. Continues to challenge himself by planning and competing in various races, including the Marine Corps Marathon and possibly a 24-hour running challenge. So, like I always do with everybody, how does that sound when you hear your bio out loud?
It makes me feel old. I've been around the sun a couple of times, I'm getting ready to celebrate my 39th birthday in September, and it's hard to believe that, I've challenged myself both physically, mentally, and spiritually over those years, even through all the challenges,
Yeah, it's a lot to go through. I mean, just your time in the Marine Corps itself and being a military veteran and currently in the military, I know that could be a challenging experience, especially with a family and just trying to improve yourself internally as well as give back to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so man, that's awesome. So with that, there's a couple of key points there I wanted to talk about, but a lot of people, what we didn't touch is prior to the military. So like prior to joining the military, like did you play any sports or anything that led into you wanting to join the military in high school, middle school, things like that?
Absolutely. So, I hit the ground running, essentially, is what my mom would say. I used to run in front of her to elementary school. And that I didn't really get into sports, though, until I was in middle school. And I that fire got lit underneath me from one of the coaches that I had, Coach Michael Miles.
Yeah.
And so, through high school, I played all sports, but my main sports were soccer and then cross country and track. And I played other sports just to keep me in shape. I also wrestled and kicked for the football team. Having that all around sports really helped me stay focused. I didn't like school that much like most high schoolers. But I knew in order to stay on the teams, I had to make, good grades.
Yeah.
And then having the JROTC in high school, really helped me out as well, teaching me all this teamwork and perseverance, and discipline. So
yeah, and I would say personally for me, you were a year or two ahead of me. And because we went to the same high school, if everybody isn't tracking that, we went to the same high school, and like seeing you do all the sports and then being in JRTC, it kind of like was a mentor to me. I was like, well, I can do this. And so I kind of followed your footsteps to the same thing, kicking for the football team. We wrestled together, all the above. And so, yeah, it's inspiring to see other people do that. And you had your own reasons, like you said, you wanted to be involved in sports and stuff, and it actually helped you with your school. And yeah, I can sympathize with that. That is 100% my mindset when it came to it as well. So do you think having like doing all of those support or competing in all of those supports, do you think it helped build some resilience or like the mindset that you had going into the military?
100%. There was nothing better than, metaphorically getting smacked in the face, in these different sporting events. Because we weren't let's face it, Jeffersontown High School is not the best high school in sports. And so
No,
anytime we went
no.
up against some of those major names, we had a good team, right? And we worked well together, but sometimes we didn't have the skills. So we
Right.
had to work extra hard. And sometimes we came out victorious, right?
Yeah.
And that taught me that, you're not always going to get handed the win. And at any given day, any of the champions can be beaten. So having that mindset made me realize that if they can do it, I can do it. And that's why I love both team sports and individual sports, because it allowed me the opportunity to let my challenge myself and let my self shine when the occasion occurred. So
Yeah, for sure. Cause like I know like playing soccer, our coach pushed us and he realized early that we didn't have the skill set. So it was like, well, we're gonna be the most in shape, toughest dudes out there. And we were. We ran and we ran.
yep,
And it was tough going from that, like, cause you know how hard you work and you see other people work. So going from a team sport and then going into wrestling where you're the only person to blame. Like it's you. Like it's
yep,
you on the mat, someone else. And I would definitely argue that that creates so much resilience and like a strong mindset. Like it's me. How do I fix me? How do I continue to work on myself? So, and you think all that fed into like your military aspect, like I,
absolutely.
yeah, I could say like for me and Marine Corps boot camp is way different than Army boot camp, I'm sure. But when I got there, I was like, I think I've had harder wrestling practices than what what today is. And I would always tell myself that. Do you think like there's some of those aspects where you're going through some of those schools, the Marine Corps offered that you went through, like you're like, I've had harder days. This is it. This is easy.
Absolutely. And one thing I was going to say back in high school and even in the Marine Corps, one thing that helped me, make it through that is having that brotherhood and those teammates pushing you. And you would almost laugh in the face of discomfort. It's almost like being in a cage fight or a boxing match and you get hit in the face for the first time. That's like your wake up call to like, hey, it's on. And
Yeah.
and I attribute a lot of my success to the people that went before me and then the people that helped push me, through along the ways, especially on the days where I, mentally I felt like I was going to break. Because, as we both know, it's like 90% mental and then the 10%, is just physical. So absolutely, I think it helped set me up because of we didn't have the best teams, so we had to collectively push each other. And I remember Coach Haydock singing that damn song in the hallway. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes
Yeah.
Benz?
Yeah.
As we're
Yeah.
running up and down the stairs, right? And all we could do was sit and laugh.
Yeah.
Not
That's all you
sit. We
can
were
do.
running and laughing.
Yeah. 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 I remember that to this day. I tell people all the time, and yeah, that man changed my mindset 100% of what toughness was. And I always talk about um, the saying that was written on the wall, and I don't even know where it came from, but it was like, um, what is it? Physical fitness and conditioning is a mockery, or sorry, toughness is a state of mind. Without it, physical fitness and conditioning is a mockery. And I never really understood it then, and to this now, these days, I'm like, man, that makes so much sense. Yeah, and he definitely pushed that into us, whether we understood the saying or just through physical, just we're gonna run you into the ground.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So as we talk about that and that resilience you had, so you mentioned having some injuries in the Marine Corps around 2016 to 2018. If you're comfortable about it, if you want to talk about those, or just maybe how it changed the way you trained, because you were always in endurance sports, but how you started changing your training towards endurance with those injuries.
Yeah, yeah. So I didn't run my first marathon until I graduated college. So in 2009. So because I needed to be in a good enough shape to play 90 minutes on the soccer field or wrestle for 3 minute rounds at a time, something along those lines. But when I was in the service, and you kind of mentioned, like during boot camp, yes, boot camp's tough. It's very tough. It's more mentally, tough than it is physically. And I would just find myself kind of giggling about it, right? And with all that being said, I had never broken a bone. I'd maybe stubbed a toe, gotten a couple, stitches here and there, growing up. And then here I am, 30, I think I was 32 years old in 2016. And we're doing a pre-deployment training. and I got stabbed in the eye. And so, it's terrible because most people are like, oh, what country were you in when it happened? And I thought I was invincible. Never thought this, something like this would happen to me. And they actually wrote SOPs after that, standard operating procedures, because of what had happened, because it had never happened before. Nobody had expected. So here I am thinking that I'm invincible. And then boom, in a flash of a second, flash of an eye, right? Getting stabbed in the eye, it changed the trajectory of my career. Um, and it put me down for a solid 6 months. And some people are like, oh, that's no time. But when you're used to going and going and going, and I'd had a son that was a year
Yeah.
and a half at the time, and I'm 4.5 years, 5 years into my enlistment at that point, and it's like, damn, what do I do now? You know, so yeah, it changed things, but that's what, and they told me, they're like, hey, you shouldn't be lifting heavy because that's what we did. You shouldn't be rucking a lot because that's what we did, because they didn't want the pressure to build up in the eye and
Oh
potential
yeah.
rupture early. So I had to change it. I had to go out and start running. And running was always kind of my thing, but it turned more into my yoga. It's where I could go and clear my head when the pain wasn't there anymore. I could go out and just kind of get lost. And I was in the mecca of beautiful weather and sandy beaches of San Diego.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
for me to get out there and run, it was endless. There wasn't enough energy in my system that I could outrun the miles that were out there. So that's where that transition into endurance sports happened for me.
And did so you couldn't do the high pressure, and you still kind of you can't really lead into a heavy lifting and stuff anymore, can you?
No, to this day I can, because one of those things that I did after I was cleared from the doctor, because they were ready to take my eye out and give me a prosthetic. But I was like, hey, let's give it a month or two. Let's see how it works. And after I started healing up and the pain started to subside, I went and jumped, skydove civilianly, and I went and did scuba diving on the civilian side, so I can hand this paper to the Bureau of Medicine and say, hey, I'm not quitting, so don't quit on me. So that way I could earn my way back into the teams. Once I showed that, I started testing it. I started lifting. I started holding my breath, like bearing down, so to speak, to see if it was going to happen. Because if anybody was going to, hang up my boots, it was going to be me. So yeah, now I can start lifting. But because I'm more of a marathon endurance runner and ultra runner, I don't lift as much anymore, like as far as heavy. It's more like body weight and calisthenics.
And that makes sense. And that's respectable too, like the fact that you went out on your own and was like, no, like you're not going to tell me I'm done. Like I'll
Yeah.
tell you when I'm done. And that mindset is very rare, believe it or not. And I wish a lot more people had that mindset in the military at times, but um, you know, that's what makes you different. That's what makes you elite, I would say, as it comes to military and your sports, and as well as just with your education that you're going through now. So you've transitioned to endurance sports. I know I've seen you run. You've run Marine Corps marathon. You've done. You just go out and randomly run a 24-hour challenge by yourself, right? Is that
Yep.
that's what I saw
Yeah.
last year? I think. Do you try to do that every year, right? Or is that?
Yeah, so every year around my birthday, so the end of September, I always like to end the old and begin the new with something that's challenged myself both physically and mentally. And so when I got injured that first time, it was in a July, and I told myself, I was like, there's a Catalina 50 miler that was coming up. I was like, all right, I'm gonna do it. I've never run over a marathon before, but I'm gonna go do this. And then the Recon Challenge happened that next April, and I was like, you know what? Sign me up, because I was just healing at that point, right?
Yeah.
And then so yes, every year I try to challenge myself with something more and more outrageous, whether it's the Murph, or whether it's the 4x4x4 that David Goggins does,
Oh
or if
yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah.
or if it's the 24-hour race, just seeing how many miles I can get. I mean, it's all just it's fun to me because it's just a self challenge. So if I need to slow down, I will. If I feel like I can speed up, I will. But I'm gonna push myself almost until the wheels fall off.
So you can is that like so you say challenge yourself mentally and physically. That's it. And a lot of times in those challenges you find out a little bit more about yourself, like who you are. Um, some people get real religious near the end there and
Yeah.
so you start talking to yourself. Yeah, man, that's awesome. And that's awesome that you do that and that you have the capacity to do that. and that your family supports that. And that's a big thing. Like, so you're training for marathons and you're doing these challenges and you're going to school. How do you balance that? Like, wife, two kids, and then full-time graduate school. Like, how do you balance all of that?
Well, I wouldn't be able to balance it if it wasn't because of a supportive wife and kids. And they actually sometimes push me out of the door because they're like, "Hey, we can tell you haven't ran in a little while. We see you're a little edgy."
Yeah.
So like today, my watch was telling me I still needed 53 hours of recovery because of a hard track workout I did on Thursday. But I had a buddy that wanted to get out and run some because he needed that. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go out and run with him. And so we did. Physically, although I'm a little worn down, mentally that helped me out a tremendous amount. So going back to like why I do this helps me nourish and constantly shape my why, through life, through school, through chiropractic, because of my family. It makes me realize that there's so much more important things in life than just for me. So one of my main reasons for staying in shape was for me in high school. And then when I started having kids, it was like, well, I want to be able to set an example for them. I'm probably the only almost 40-year-old dad that's going out and doing this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when I talk to them, I'm like, hey, look at your friend. I'm not doing it in a judgmental way, but what they see as normal, I try to show them that this isn't normal. But this should be how people take care of themselves. Maybe not to the extreme of going and running 24-hour races, but we should be doing 24-hour or week-long marathons of sitting on the couch and just vegging out.
Yeah.
So, and I also like to express to them that the only limitations are the ones that you set for yourself. So, yeah.
I always tell athletes and just people in general, like if you want to do it, you're going to make time, and if you want to help yourself get better, you're going to make time for it.
Yeah.
When you start
Yeah.
making excuses, I have a buddy that's always like, "Oh man, this happened with the kids, this and this," and I'm like, "Well, what time did you get up this morning? Like, did you wait till the last minute to get up, or did you get up this morning and go out and take care of yourself and then get at it?" And I would argue a lot of men need that space, and women too. But speaking from my experience as a husband and a dad, is like we need that time, something just to be alone. Like you said, it's like your yoga essentially, or your recovery, like just mentally reset your why and get after it. I used to always do this run. Because when I was stationed in DC, I would leave the DC Armory and I could run past the Capitol, down um, the National Mall, and I always
Mhm.
called it like my freedom run because I passed all the
Yeah.
monuments. But it was a reset for me. I would run all the way down to the Lincoln, and as the sun was coming up, see the sun come up over the mall. To me, it was like, all right, I know why I'm doing this. I know why I still serve. I know, like it still brings like chills to me to this day, and I can't wait to
Yeah.
get back to doing that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that
So I make time, like you said.
yeah.
You have to plan ahead, right? I've never been the type of person that can just sporadically do something,
Hmm.
especially with wife and kids and full time, school, etc. Like undergrad, right? 12 to 16 credit hours is full time. During this 3.5 year program, if you're not taking anything above 25 to 30 credit hours in a quarter, because they're not on semesters, they're 11 weeks, you're not going to graduate in time. So I mean, we're gassed, to the floor the entire time. So your adrenals are shot, your cortisol levels are flatlined. So I have to find time to help reset myself, or I'm just going to be drowning in misery of schoolwork. And like I mentioned in the beginning, school has never been my favorite thing, and I never thought I would go back to school after 15 years of getting my undergrad. This was going to be my third career. So
Yeah.
my why had to be bigger than driving, 45 minutes to an hour in Atlanta traffic. And if anybody knows about Atlanta traffic, it's terrible.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine, man.
So it's not DC traffic, but it's
Yeah.
still
It's still bad. I mean,
bad.
anytime over 30 minutes in a car is just miserable, man. Especially when it's like sit still. Like it's just
Yeah,
sitting there like, oh my gosh. I got through so many books while living in DC. Like, yeah.
absolutely.
So with that, you talk about going into your third career. We're talking about training for endurance and your why and everything. So how has chiropractic school been? And then has it changed your outlook on training and recovery in general, um, with
Yeah.
sports or
I mean, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, absolutely. So, and I just want to back up a little bit. I didn't get adjusted my first time. I'd never seen a chiropractor until I finally had that downtime due to my injuries in the Marine Corps. They started introducing it to the DoD, at least in the Marine Corps, around 2016, 2017 timeframe. Mm-hmm. And so it helped me so much that I sought out that service when I was in the VA system when I got out. And the chiropractor that I was seeing at the time was like, hey, have you ever considered to going to chiropractic school? Now, mind you, I'd never lived in Georgia. We only moved from California to Georgia because a mutual friend that we have, Xavier Martinez, his family lived in Woodstock. So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a try. We want to be back on the East Coast, the Southeast. It's close enough to the beach, but far enough away from home that nobody can just drop in. And lo and behold, that right down the road is Life University. So going through the program, I was always kind of skeptical because I was like, oh, well, this is just a feel-good thing to get you out of pain. But I've seen so many miracles, from kids that are colicky, not able to poop, all of a sudden are able to, kids and people with ADHD symptoms, having reduced symptoms and off of medication, all these different things. And now that I'm in my last 6 months, and I graduate in June, now that I'm in my last 6 months, I've been doing my internship and I've been out and at practice, getting my hands on people, seeing these miracles that happen every day, seeing them every day, instead of just being that one person that goes and maybe see every once in a while. So it has taught me to be proactive, when it comes to endurance sports and health in general, because it shouldn't be a reactionary thing. You shouldn't be, taking your nutrition for a marathon after the marathon. That just doesn't logically make sense. You wouldn't wait until your engine on your car blows up, right, until you change the oil. So we have to have these constant maintenance things, even if you're not in pain. So it's changed a ton of things from a holistic approach when it comes to, my endurance. And I would say that my trajectory of my peaking is still going up. I don't think I've hit my PR yet in a marathon. I don't think I've hit my PR yet in a half marathon. And I think now that I'm not in a seat for 12 hours a day and driving for another 2 hours a day, I'm going to continue to see myself progress. So I think year 39 and year 40 are going to be huge for me.
That's awesome. So you talk about, and I know you're not a certified chiropractor yet, so I don't want you to have to say anything outside of your realm, but with chiropractic, so I started getting adjusted a couple years ago. I started having a lot of lower back issues. I think it's from sitting in the car a lot, right? And so when I started going and get adjusted, not only did it help me with my lower back issues, but my digestive system got much better as well. Can you speak to some of that with getting adjustments, like how it adjusts helps with internal organ function, not just the structure of the body?
Absolutely. So from 2 cells, your mom, your dad make 70 million cells, right? It's amazing, right? But the first organ to grow is your brain. And then from the brain comes your brain stem. So this is the electrical system of your body. Now from that brain stem and then your spinal cord comes all the nerves that go to those organs. And then the organs are created. So it would make sense to almost relate it to like the circuit breaker of your house, right? If you have a pinched line that's from your circuit breaker to that outlet or to that TV that you're trying to work, it might flicker or it might not turn on at all, right? Mm-hmm. So the bones that surround that is like the conduit that protects that line. So if we're as chiropractors, are moving those bones back where they're supposed to be, and that flow of electricity, that flow of fluid, because it's also vascular as well and lymphatic, it's going to help that flow not be impeded. So you're going to have full transmission both from the brain to the organ and then from the organ back to the brain. So people that are having IBS, that are having gastro issues like GERD, they're having acid reflux, they're having urinary incontinence. We can help, as chiropractors, can help with all of that because we're connecting the brain to body and allowing it to optimize functionally. And we're only putting in an impulse that allows the body, because the body's smart, right? The body is constantly combating, things that are coming from the outside, whether it's temperature, whether it's you standing up and trying to keep balance, trying to keep your eyes on the horizon. It's always trying to adjust. We don't have to do that. That's an automatic thing. But if you're constantly doing things that are like slunging forward or driving or other things that are these other micro insults to the body, we as chiropractors can help get rid of that interference and then educate you and teach you how to prevent those from happening again. Because ultimately, I don't want to keep seeing you as a patient. I want to educate you to the point where you know all the right things to do, kind of like a triathlon coach. You want to educate that athlete well enough so they only have to come to you for fine tuning. So every time you come to me, I want it to be, once a week, maybe once a month. So that way you're doing all the things 23 hours a day that are keeping yourself from getting back to being in an injured state.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've never heard it explained that way, and I hope that helps everybody else understand the importance of alignment and through chiropractic practice. So that's pretty cool, man. And that's just years of learning and putting it into it. And man, you're gonna be out in the field soon, per se, and getting to make a difference in people's lives. And that's
Yeah.
exciting, dude. That's
Yeah.
super exciting.
And one more thing I want to say is, like, don't wait until you're an adult to get checked, right? You think about it from conception, right? A mom might be carrying that baby and the baby's, all weird inside the womb, right? And then a lot of births are traumatic, right? Whether they're doing a C-section, using forceps, and that's putting a lot of strain on the nervous system. So as they're starting to develop, you want to have babies getting checked as early as possible to give them the optimal opportunity to develop how they're supposed to. Right? You don't want a constant, line of the plumbing to be clogged up and not allowing that flow to go through. So if you have kids, I would encourage you to have them at least checked to see that their neurology is good.
Really noted. Okay, awesome. Well, that's pretty awesome, and I'm glad we got to hear that. And do you have a practice that you're going to when you graduate? Have you looked into that yet, or where
I
people could
do.
find you if you were going to be out there practicing?
Absolutely. So I'm located, I live in Cumming, Georgia, but the office that I'm shadowing at, or not shadowing, doing my internship at, is called Align Life of Sugar Hill. So it's just a town right down the street from me, 20-minute drive. And they have offered me a position. So I'll be coming on board as soon as I graduate the middle of June.
Awesome. Well, if you guys want to check out Dustin Biggerstaff and get straightened up and get back on track, then now you know where to find him. And I want to jump from the chiropractic side to what your shirt says there, and if you can explain a little bit about Team Semper Fi, if you're able to right now, and what they've done for you, and oh, the why you represent them when you race.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of great foundations out there, right? Nonprofits. One of the ones that has impacted me the most and has been with me since day one of medically retiring is the Semper Fi and America's Fund. Now, initially people think, well, Semper Fi, that's only the Marine Corps. That's only because it started out because of Marine Corps spouses back in 2001. But since then, they've grown to service all active duty and veterans and their families that have been critically injured, ill, or wounded due to a service-connected injury. So this offers to all branches of service. So I fall under the umbrella of Team Semper Fi under this foundation, and they have a system called Recovery Through Sport. And then, as you can imagine, my sport of choice is running. So a lot of these marathons that I've been able to do, to include the Marine Corps Marathon coming up in the end of October, has been because of the Semper Fi and America's Fund. So they have different programs, like the Runners Battalion that offers a 34-week program for people that may have zero experience with running a marathon to all the experience in the world, but they're still taking them through a guided virtual program no matter where you are at in the world. And then that culminating event being the Marine Corps Marathon at the end of October.
And that's pretty cool. I did not know they offered all of that. And so how do
Yes.
people get involved with Team Semper Fi if they wanted to? They just look it up and shoot a
Yeah.
message, or
Yeah. And I'll share a link with you when we're done. Semperfi and America's Fund.org. If they just Google that or bring up that link, as long as you, I believe it's 10% or maybe it's 30% or higher post 9/11 VA rating, then you qualify. Okay. So they should definitely look into it, because there's tons of resources, from retrofitting, your house and your vehicle if you're an amputee. They have entrepreneur programs. They have, again, different sporting programs. I'm going through a neural fitness program and budgeting program right now that helps you fine tune your budget and make sure that you're financially sound. The neural fitness helps people with like PTSD, people that have suffered with TBIs, people that have memory issues and or anxiety. And all of this is sponsored by community athletes and people that donate. 97% of the proceeds that come in go to the service members and their families. So they have one of the very lowest overheads from any nonprofit that's out there. so that you can ensure that everything that you donate and everything that, I raise and so on and so forth is going to those service members.
That's awesome. And last question about that is like, so it's Team Semper Fi, but sister services, so Marine Corps, Army, Navy, everybody can apply if they meet those
Absolutely.
requirements, right? It's not just Marine Corps.
Yes. And I would encourage everyone to apply, whether they think they qualify or not, because it's a definitive no unless you ask, right? So don't disqualify yourself without even seeing if you're qualified.
No, that makes sense. Good deal, man. And so I highly recommend. I'll probably look into it once I get out of the military for sure. I think they have a lot to offer. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that with us, man.
Well, don't wait until you get out, because you can still become a community athlete even before. So
Oh,
if there's
okay.
a foundation that you're looking to represent, then you can do that while you're in. So like if you're wanting to go to the Marine Corps Marathon, for instance, or the Boston Marathon, which is happening on Monday, they have community athletes that they raise the minimum requirement, and then they get a bib to go run those races. And then while you're there, you're being wined and dined with this community of community athletes that have raised the funds to this culminating event, whatever that might be.
Oh, okay. Awesome. All right. And I have one last question for you today. And I just want to, if you could provide any kind of advice for anyone thinking about getting into endurance sports, like brand new to it, or maybe just getting back into it, what would that advice be to them?
Have grace, right? Nothing, it seems like this elephant, right? That I'm going to eventually do a marathon. I'm eventually going to do a 50 miler, but you don't eat an elephant all at once, right? You got to take it one step at a time. I can't tell you the number of runs that I've been on that I think I have it in the bag with all my years of experience. But, I think back to the days when I first started, and all I can do is smile, because it's a journey. So ask your friends, become part of a tribe in your community. Those that have like-minded goals. So that way you guys can support each other. That's probably my biggest piece of advice. Define your why and why you're wanting to do it. And at the end of the day, it should be to have fun, essentially. So don't just be out there being miserable for no reason. All right.
Yeah, for sure. And that's some great advice. And I hope everybody takes that and applies that to themselves. So, but man, thank you, Dustin, for joining. It's been great catching up with an old teammate, friend, and mentor. You truly represent resilience, dedication, and showcase the positive attributes of a man, a father, and a husband in a community. And we really appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming on today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Aubrey.
Yeah, for sure.
Did I say
And
Sergeant Major?
yeah, one day. And for everybody out there, if you're looking for a coach, all PM coaches are taking on new athletes. That's whether it's running, triathlon, or strength training. Click the follow button on the podcast or YouTube if you like to follow us. And you can submit questions either on the link at the bottom of the podcast or at precisemultisport@gmail.com or at precisemultisport.com/contact us. Thanks everybody for joining us today.
Awesome.
Thank you all for joining the Multisport Mindset Podcast. Click that follow button and join us every Wednesday for a new episode. Make sure to visit the team website at www.precisemultisport.com. Follow on Instagram and subscribe on YouTube. We will see you next week.